Alright, what's up guys? Since I dropped my last tutorial of the spinning money effect around your subject, everyone's been hitting me up asking me to do the clone version of this, so here it is. We're going to do this clone spinning effect around your subject. I'm calling it the merry-go-round effect because, it looks like a merry-go-round. It's a pretty cool effect. I've been doing it recently, but there are a couple things you need to know first. This effect is really hard. I'm 100% certain you're going to have trouble doing this effect. This effect doesn't work on every clip. This effect works differently on every clip. Your settings are most likely going to be way different than mine, but I try to go through all the settings and all the possibilities of ways you can achieve this effect. This effect depends on so many factors of your footage, how you shot the footage, where your subject is in the footage, how close they are to the camera, and saying that you're going to have to mess with these settings a lot just to get the effect to look right on your clip. That being said, I'm going to go extra slow in this tutorial, but if I'm still going too fast, you guys can play the video back at half speed and just kind of copy the settings, but I do say some important stuff, so try to pay attention. Also, if you guys have any tips on how to do this effect differently, or you found out this way was easier, please let me know in the comments. I would appreciate it, everyone else would appreciate it, and I'll pin it and then I'll shout it out or something. Comment of what you guys want to see next. I'll make a tutorial on it. Make sure you subscribe, like, and follow my Instagram. Alright, let's get into it. In After Effects now, here's the clip we're going to be using, or I'm going to be using. I've done this effect on this clip before, so I kind of know what settings to use, so you guys don't have to be tortured by it. But like I said in the intro, please pay attention. So, first thing you want to do is we're going to want to rotoscope our subject out. And so for this effect, it's most likely going to be your artist, the main artist, or, whatever. So, I'm going to select my clip, press Ctrl D. That's going to duplicate the clip and automatically highlight the top, which is what we want. We're going to go to this top. We're going to select this guy with the paintbrush tool, and then we're going to go to our video preview and double click on it. Now we're going to highlight our subject and then make sure you're on full, because if you're not, your rotoscope turns out bad. We're going to highlight our subject and we're going to kind of paint around him, and we're going to do this for each frame. And that's how you're gonna rotoscope. But this is not a rotoscoping tutorial, so I'm gonna go ahead and speed this up. See you guys in 5 seconds. Okay, so here's my rotoscope, and here's what it looks like. It's not the perfect. It's not perfect. It's not the best, but for the tutorial sake, it's good enough. All right, so here's how we do the effect. Now, like I said in the intro, I should have said this in the intro. This effect has a lot of settings to it, and they're all contingent on your clip, how you shot it, where the subject is in the video, how you want the clip to look, and sometimes it might not even work. So if I'm going too fast, go ahead and play the video at half speed and copy the settings I'm going to use. But even then, these settings I'm going to use might not even work for your clip, or you might not like them. So this is, like I said, this is going to be a doozy. So since we have a rotoscoped person out on the top layer, we're going to go ahead, right click, and pre-compose the top layer. Make sure move all attributes is selected. I don't know if you guys can see that. Make sure move all attributes is selected. Click OK. That will pre-compose the top layer. I'm going to go ahead and check the bottom layer so we can see what's going on. Now we're going to go to our effects and presets and look up CC particle world. Right here, CC particle world. Go ahead and drag that onto your pre-comp rotoscope. Now if you look at it, we'll have fireworks over him, which is not what we want. And if we disable the bottom layer, we can't even see our rotoscope no more. Don't worry, we're going to get our rotoscope back. So right here to our effect controls, go ahead and click extras and go ahead and click composite with original. Boom, our rotoscope back. And if you really look at it, the fireworks he's moving in between the fireworks, which just helps it with the spinning effect. Okay, so depending on your clip, I usually get rid of these grids first, but depending on your clip, you might not want to get rid of your clips, or might not want to get rid of your grids, because you might have to move the producer, you might have to change the Z depth of the producer, and all that. But since I know I don't really have to do that with this one, I'm going to go ahead and get rid of them. So grids and guides, go ahead and open that, and all these check marks, just go ahead and check them off. So now if we look, we just have the fireworks and our rotoscope. So we're going to need to change these fireworks to spinning. So we're going to go ahead and open the producer, and then, we're going to go ahead and open the physics, and then we're going to open up the extras. And in the extras tab, we're going to open up the effect camera. Now pay attention to this. So there's 4 ways to make the particles spin around your subject. In the physics tab, you can use viscous, twirl, twirly, and the last way is not in the physics tab, it's in the extras effect camera tab. And right here where it says rotation Y, if you spin it, the particles will spin around your subject. Depending on your clip, you might need to use a combination of these. So I know for a fact for this clip, I'm going to need to use twirly, and I'm going to need to change the rotation Y on my camera to get the best effect. Your clip might look best with twirl and a rotation of Y. It might look best with none of these, like maybe just keep it at the default explosion and just rotation at the Y. It really depends on your clip and how you want it to look. So since I know for this clip, I'm going to need to use twirly, and I'm going to need to change the rotation to Y. So I'm going to go ahead and change that back to 0. So if we look right now, we have particles kind of spewing out and spinning around our subject. First thing I notice is, well, our particles aren't clones of him. We're going to change that later, don't worry. But the particles are falling down. We don't want that. So go ahead right here where it says gravity, go ahead and change that to 0. Once you change that to 0, you're going to have a spinning disc. Here, let me change this to quarter so my computer renders faster. Okay, so now we have a spinning disc around our subject. So now it's time to change the particles from lines into clones. So go ahead and into your effects panel, go ahead and click the particle tab. And right here where it says particle type, go ahead and click this. Now there's 2 particle types you can choose. You can use textured quad polygon, and you can use textured square. Textured quad polygon has the least amount of ability to change the particles and have the best particle looking. However, you can change the lights way easier to match the subject more. Textured square is easier to change the particles and change the movement of the particles, and the particles look better, but the lighting on the texture square is harder to change and hard to get perfect to match your original subject. So this might not make sense, but this might not make sense right now, but I'm going to choose textured quad polygon first, and then I'm going to show you what the difference is. So I'm going to click textured quad polygon, and then you can see nothing happens and our little lines disappeared. Well, right underneath particle type is texture tab. This will pop up. Go ahead and click that. On texture layer where it says none, go ahead and click that and click the first layer, which is our pre-comp rotoscope. Go ahead and click that, and you don't have to click mask or effects mask, you can just click source. Okay, so now you can see we have like clones of him spinning, but if you notice there's a million of them and they're too small. So first thing we're going to change is the size of the clones, just so you can see what's going on. So in the particle tab where it says birth size, go ahead and increase that to where you get roughly the same size as your main rotoscope, but you don't want to go larger or you don't want to go the exact same size. You want to get a little bit under, and here's the reason why. So once you change the birth size, you're going to want to go ahead and copy. So you're going to want to go ahead and copy the birth number. So I just click on it, press Control C on my keyboard. I'm going to go to this death size, click that number, and press Control V to copy it to make sure these numbers are the same. Now what that does is the birth size, so meaning when the particle comes on the screen, is the same size so when it ends on the screen, if that makes sense. So they're pretty much they should most likely be the same size. Now here's another setting you have to change. The size variation, you want to change that to 0, definitely. So now all the particles should be the same size unless they're farther away from the camera. So you can see how this clone right here, you can't see because there's too many of them, but this clone right here is bigger than technically like this clone because this clone is farther away from the camera, right? So, but they should technically all be the same size now. Now you might be wondering why there's like a ghost scene effect on your clones. Well, if we go one setting down, the max opacity, go ahead and change that to 100. Now you still might notice that there's still ghosting around the clones. Well, we have to go one more setting down right here where it says opacity map, and then it'll have this curve. I just like to fill this in by clicking and dragging and just fill the whole thing in, and then now you shouldn't have any kind of ghosting effect. You might still have this kind of white, like it kind of washed them out effect, and we'll fix that later. But for right now, there should be no ghosting on your particles. So right now there's too many particles on the screen. I can't see what's going on. So I'm gonna move my cursor to the beginning of the comp, and I'm gonna scroll all the way up, and then right here where it says birth rate, you don't have to open it, but I'm just gonna open it so you guys can see what's going on. I'm gonna change that to 0. So now we should get no clones. Now I like to do this because this is like the only way you can kind of dictate how many clones you have technically, but you're not gonna dictate how many clones you have. You just kind of have to mess with these settings to get the amount of clones. I think the best amount of clones is around like 5, but if you want like 1,000, you can have 1,000. I just prefer having less clones. I think it's more of a cleaner effect. So saying that, you're gonna have to change this birth rate. So I'm gonna move my cursor to the beginning of the clip of where I want my effect to start. I'm gonna keyframe the birth rate at 0. I'm gonna go 5 frames forward. So right here where it says 5 frames, I'm gonna change this birth rate to 0.1. Okay, and then I'm gonna go 10 frames. So 5 more frames. I'm gonna go 10 frames now. So 5 more frames from 5 is 10. I'm gonna change the birth rate back down to 0. If you don't change it back down to 0, your clones are gonna keep spawning. So if you look at it, we'll have the birth rate is at 0, so the spawn rate is at 0, and then when we reach around 5, they start spawning in, and then they should stop spawning in when we reach 10. So this is kind of like the only way to like kind of control how many clones you have, but even then you can't really control how many clones you have. So you just have to mess with these settings, which we can later on in the tutorial we're going to refine the settings to make it more of what we want. So if you can see right now, we have 4 clones and they're kind of doing the spin thing around him, which is what we need. But if we go on to the effect, we can kind of see we have a problem here. The clones disappear for some reason. Well, the reason that is underneath birth rate, 1 underneath birth rate is the longevity. Right here it says 1. So this means however long your clones will last or your particles last, it would be 1 second. So if you notice, at 1 second, our clones disappear. Well, I know my whole clip is at least larger than 2 seconds, 10 frames. So if I make it 3 seconds, we should be fine, right? So if you have a 10-second clip, make the longevity 11 seconds and you should be fine. They should have clones throughout the whole thing, unless you want them to fade away and die. Okay, so if you look, now we have clones throughout the whole scene. Now my rotoscope is bad because I'm also on quarter. If you're having trouble, I just put it on quarter so my computer can run faster. But if you put it on full, your rotoscope should look perfect. So let me put it on full and wait a couple years for my computer to render the scene. Okay, so now my computer finally rendered it and you can see the rotoscope is fine, but I'm gonna change it back to quarter just so we can get on with the tutorial. So if you guys are having that issue, just change it back to full and you can preview how it's looking. Okay, so now we have this extra problem of our clones are spinning in 3D space, which is, it's kind of like a thing right now to have your clones spin in 3D space, but we don't want that for this effect. We just want them to be regular. So here, let me close all this. Now we need to go back to particle, and right here underneath texture layer, texture time, go ahead and change this rotation speed all the way down to 0. Here, let me see where you can see, and then change this initial rotation back down to 0. So now we have our clones upright, which is what we want. But however, you can see there's some ugliness. The clones are cut off right here. So I'm just going to increase the birth size a little bit. And whenever I increase the birth size, I'm going to always need to increase the death size to the same amount. So I'm going to Control C the birth size, paste it onto the death size. And then I'm going to do that again till this ugliness kind of disappears. Control C, Control V. And now there are other ways, so you can see back here where it's still cut off, and we'll fix that later on in the video, but right now we're just getting the birth size and everything situated. Okay, so the next problem I see is my clones don't look exactly like him. They're washed out, they're like bright for some reason. Well, here, let me clean up my effect control panel. Now we're gonna need to go to extras, and right here where it says light direction. Now here's the kind of the pro with using the textured polygon particle. The textured polygon particle type is you can kind of get the same color as your original just by moving one light. So right here, under light direction, light Z. If you move this all the way down, you'll get, you know, pretty much almost the same. And then I'm gonna move it a little bit up to so it matches my main rotoscope first. And then now we're getting closer to the effect. So I'm gonna show you how to change one setting first, and then I'm gonna go back to the cons to this. So let me change. So if you guys notice now, the clones are they're kind of nice, but there's some ugliness right here at the bottom. Well, a different way to solve this is you can, under the extras tab and the effect camera, you can change this rotation X downward so that the clones are kind of tilted downward, if that makes sense. So if I tilt this downward, you kind of don't see the ugliness no more, but they're kind of, the spinning is going to be tilted upward. I can't really show you. It's like, look at this, like you see how this is not like center, is tilted upward. That's how the spinning is going to go, which is fine. Like no one watching your video is going to notice that the spinning is going to upward. They're going to see that the clones are spinning. They're going to be like amazed, which is fine. So that's pretty much how you do the effect with the quad texture polygon method. Oh, here, let me show you one thing extra. If you don't like the way the clones are spinning, or if you don't like the number of clones you have, if you change all these settings, you can go all the way to the bottom in the extras tab again, and you can change this random seed to any number, and each number will have a different generation of particles. So it'll just be a different, like, it'll be different clones, kind of like it's, I don't know how to explain it. It's a different generation of clones, so they're going to be spinning different, moving different, and a different amount, if that makes sense. So if you look at it, this number only has 2 clones, and you can see it's kind of moving okay, but I kind of don't want this. So I would recommend, after changing all the settings before you change anything else, messing with these numbers to see if you can get, you know, something close to what you wanted, and then adjusting the effects. But if not, then, you know, you're gonna have to adjust the effects. So that's another tip. All right, so now let me go back and show you what some of the problems is using the textured polygon particle type. So if you can see, well, I'm gonna show you one first. So if you can see right here, he's cut off for some reason. And this only happens in the textured quad polygon. He's cut off, and I know you might be thinking that's because the rotoscope's cut off, but it's not. If I go to full, here, let me go to half so my computer doesn't explode. Okay, so you can see that he is not cut off, like his elbow is not cut off, but if you look at this back clone, and even this clone right here, it's cut off for some reason. If for some reason that's how the textured quad polygon works. I haven't figured out a way to expand the textured quad polygon to include everything, but that's just one of the cons using the textured quad polygon. The other con is, in the beginning when I showed you that there's the 4th way of how to have particles spinning around your subject, is if you scroll down all the way to effect camera, extras effect camera, and if you spin this Y rotation, you'll have particles spinning around him, but you can see that the clones are spinning themselves, which is, you know, it adds that 3D effect, which you might like, but I don't like that. That looks cheesy to me. So let me reset all these settings. So if you're having trouble with that too, and you don't want it to look like that, the other particle type you can use is textured square. Now, since I already have the textured layer, it should be clones. Now you can see it already changed everything up. So first thing we notice is the clones aren't the same size, and the clones are yellow. Well, we can fix that. But if we look at it, it even changed the number of clones and how they spin, just because it's technically a different particle like type. So the particle type is going to spin differently. And you can see they're not even the same size, and they're kind of like above. So we're just gonna have to go through the settings again and change them up. So I'm gonna go back in my particles tab. I'm gonna change the birth size. I'm gonna go ahead and increase that to get something close to what we need. And then since I changed the birth size, I'm definitely gonna have to change the death size, and copy and paste it just like that. Now, since we did change the camera, it might be a camera. If we scroll down to the extras effect camera and this rotation X, I'm gonna go ahead and change that back to 0 to see. And then now they're pretty much changing. Now we're pretty much moving on to plane. Now I just kind of need to go back and change the birth size again to get a bigger clone to kind of match it. Make sure you match the birth size to the death size, just like that. And then now with this extra back here, now we can change the rotation X to something more usable like this. Okay, alright, so now if you can see, we have different clones. Technically this clone is like in front of this one somehow. That's why it's bigger, because it's closer to the camera, but it's not. That's what I'm saying. You're gonna have a lot of trouble with this effect. So if you keep going on, we're gonna want to change these clones from being yellow to being the same color like that he is, which is not yellow. So in the particles tab, right here where it says color map, where it says birth to death, go ahead and change that to origin constant. Now they're not yellow, but they're definitely all over the place. You can see this guy is closer to our original, and these guys are like not like in the same realm. Well, that's because we need to go back and go back to the extras tab, light direction, and we need to change the light direction to match this specific particle type. And now here's the con with this one. It's very hard to get the exact lighting to fix this. So my only guess would be to pretty much make the light like all the way up here, so that all these particles are pretty much affected the same, so we kind of get like an even brightness on all of them. So if you just change the lighting all the way to 0, so change the light X, light Y, and light Z, pretty much nothing's changed. So I'm gonna move the light Y all the way up, so technically the light's all the way here. I'm gonna move the light Z, I think, backwards, which would be coming towards me, but then now the light X, but they still haven't changed. So the light X, I'm gonna move this. So now you can see I changed the light and nothing has happened. So here's the problem I have with this one. I can't really get a perfect lighting situation with these clones either. And you can see if you go through the effect, they change lighting, like the clones change lighting depending on where the light position is. So you really have to kind of get the lighting perfect, which is hard to do with this particle type. But if you really like this particle type, which I kind of do, if you can like kind of deal with your clones being different colors, you can go ahead and mess with the Y rotation, which is the pro of this one. If I mess with the Y rotation, the particles will spin around my clone, and look, the particles themselves are not spinning. So if we look back at the textured quad polygon, if we mess with the Y, the clones would be turned into 3D, and but if we change it back to textured square, the clones just spin around our subject, which is kind of what we want, and they don't spin. Okay, so I changed my volume shade approximate. That was at 0 before. I went ahead and changed that to 100. That changed it a little bit, and then I went ahead and changed my lights back to 0. So it's looking okay, but we're really gonna have to mess with these lights to get a certain look. I don't have the time to do this right now in this tutorial, but if you're doing this for a client or your work, I recommend finding the exact lighting you can, or maybe even adding a brightness from your effects presets to get the correct one. But that being said, I'm going to go back to textured quad polygon just so you can see what happens, and I'm going to zero out the rotation of the Y. And then since I changed it back to textured quad polygon, I have to move the birth size and the death size back down since it's a different particle type. So now if you look at it in total, this is the effect we have. It's very close to perfect, and it's technically what I did in that one preview I showed you. It was just a little bit different, but I did use the same method. That's basically it for this tutorial. Leave a comment of what you want to see next. I'm serious. If you leave a comment what you want to see next, what tutorial, I'll make it. Trust me. Unless it's my own videos. Anyways, leave a comment what you want to see next. Like and subscribe. If you have any suggestions, if you have any tips on how to do this effect or particle world, leave in the comments. I will appreciate it. Everyone else will appreciate it. Make sure you subscribe. Follow my Instagram. Peace out later.